Good evening and welcome to this special broadcast brought to you by SABC News. Well, the ruling party in South Africa, the African National Congress, turned 100 today. And it is still in power, and it is the oldest liberation movement in the continent. Well, tonight we unpack the package of proposals, the package of assessments that the ANC gave to the nation today. In a statement read out by President Jacob Zuma, the ANC put forward its assessment of its own performance, its assessment of itself as a political party, but also how it plans to take the country forward. Mr. Deputy President, thank you and welcome to this special broadcast.
Well, good evening, Vuyo, and thanks for inviting me.
Well, 100 years is no mean feat. I mean, every ANC member would be elated without a doubt. What do you think is responsible or has been responsible for the ANC's resilience over the years?
Well, firstly, it's the vision of the founding fathers and mothers of the ANC, in that they were able to call for the unity of all the African people who were excluded from the main body politic, as we know, in 1910. And in response, they called for this unity. And so the African people then answered that call, that clarion call, on the 8th of January by converging here in Mangaung to found the Native Congress. Now, one of the lessons of this history is that the ANC never adopted the cultural norms of the various tribes, nor the catechisms of the various religious institutions. Instead, it recognized that those existed. They are a reality, objective reality, and however that it must fashion its own policies, informed and guided by the desire to unite the African people. And so unity has been paramount, overriding consideration in the life of the African National Congress.
And you think that is what has made the ANC to last for so long?
That is what has made the ANC to last for 100 years, because when differences arise, if you bring the catechism of one church and make it the primary law, when the churches themselves have differences around that issue, you are inviting those differences into the organization. Likewise, if the cultural practices of various African people are made to be the deciding factors in the organization, you are then bringing those differences into the organization. So they respected, they recognized and accepted that these obtain and that they should be respected by the African National Congress. And hence, 100 years later, our watchword is unity in diversity, because they recognize that as they are building unity, they should also recognize the diversity of our people.
100 years later, would you say that the ANC has stuck to those values and has never at any stage compromised on those?
In fact, over the years, the ANC has expanded on those values, because whereas initially the unity was to be the unity of those excluded from the main body politic of the Union of South Africa, with time it opened up, its arms and embraced all South Africans. And that is why today, when we say that, we are striving for the creation of a united, democratic, non-sexist, non-racial South Africa, it is something that is inspired by the vision of the founding fathers of the ANC.
Now, Deputy President, I mean, over the past few days and weeks, at the SABC, we've been running documentaries and other programs going back to, like, talking or telling people or bringing to people the history of the ANC. So I don't want us to dwell into the history, because we've done that fairly adequately, in my view, over time. I want us to talk about the here and now. Right now, as the leadership of the ANC, are you happy about the overall state of the organization?
Well, as the leadership of the ANC today, we recognize that even as we are celebrating 100 years of the ANC's glorious life, we should not be consumed by self-adulation. We should instead lift the necessary lessons out of this rich history. Lessons that would enable us to look deep into the future and therefore have a vision of how we will be able to respond effectively and promptly to the challenges of today. Education of our children, to ensure that they all enter institutions of learning from the same starting blocks, and that first and foremost access is critical, but also that the preparatory stage offers them the same quality of training.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, Deputy President, because around education, in the statement that the ANC National Executive released today, which was read by the President, it says that in terms of education, South Africa is performing poorly, and that this constitutes, I quote, a crisis. But then, what do you say to someone who says, but the ANC actually is in government and has the ability to actually address that wrong?
Yes, indeed, the ANC is the governing party, but the ANC has no monopoly of wisdom, and that is why the critical matter of education is a societal matter, and that is why the National Executive Committee feels that all South Africans must engage with the efforts of improving on education. But of course, you can't correct the weaknesses by taking respite. There's no such opportunity of respite. You have to continue making efforts to improve on the capacity which obtains today, as well as examining how best to ensure that the preparation of the young learners is standardized and of the best quality, so that because you see at the moment the enrollment percentages at the lower levels are very high, but then they taper down, and only a few filter through into tertiary education levels, and we have to ensure that we look at that problem and find a solution to that problem. Yeah.
Now, that's one part of the problem. You've also mentioned the fact that it's a societal issue. But has the ANC created enough space for other people, including people outside of the ANC, who have a contribution to make towards education? And one begins to think of provinces like the Eastern Cape, who are worst performing, and this has been consistently the case over time, but nothing seems to be improving at all. Have you created enough space for people who do have solutions and who can assist in the resolution of?
I don't think so. I would be the first one to admit that we have not created enough space.
Why?
That's part of the reflection of being 100 years old. When we reflect, we realize that we can't dwell, we can't be prisoners of self-adulation. We can't continue to rely on icons of our history. We need icons today in the area of education, in the area of health, in all phases of life. That's what we need. And that's a reflection that we've made as a National Executive Committee, that going forward, we must be able, because to change society in a radical fashion requires mobilization and participation of the broadest cross-section of the population. And we should create the space so that the best available talent in this country can serve and contribute to the better of all.
Mr. President, we are going to take a quick commercial break. We will be back right after this. Welcome back. You're watching a live special broadcast. We're coming to you from Bloemfontein, where the ANC is holding 100 years of existence in South Africa. This, of course, being the place where the ANC was born. Bloemfontein, that is, being the place where the ANC was born back 100 years ago. So what happened today here, in case you didn't see it in our sister channel, SABC2, the ANC made an assessment of the challenges facing the party, but also made some acknowledgements of the things that it has, as well as the things that it hasn't done. And with me today to explore that speech and those acknowledgements, those hopes that the ANC has, is of course the party's Deputy President, Mr. Kgalema Mothlante. Mr. Deputy President, one other thing that caught my eye from the statement was this line that says, "Access to the courts must be made simpler and not be a function of access to resources." And I think this rings true for a lot of poor people, and we have millions of poor people in this country, that those who are seemingly able to access justice are people who have money. Poor people rot in jail for minor offenses because they can't pay fines, or why is the ANC seemingly unable to actually begin a process that addresses these things, especially when considering that we actually pay a lot to keep these people in jail and to maintain them?
Yes, that's true, Vuyo. We believe that what we need to do is also to ensure that the criminal justice system in its totality works in a coordinated fashion. The investigators should know what kind of evidence would be required in order to effect prosecution successfully. And these are the areas that needs to be improved upon. The issue of access is also critical in that it's a function of one's liquidity. If you don't have the requisite funds, you can hardly file in an application, where you need recourse through the courts, and the system of pro bono is an endeavor to address that challenge. But in the long run, we need to be able to make sure that the laws are streamlined such that it should not require so much resources for people to access justice. That's the view of the National Executive Committee.
But you wouldn't say that perhaps the ANC too was a bit too tardy in actually addressing this, because it's been a problem for a very long time?
Yes, indeed, it's been a problem for a very long time, because you see, Vuyo, the society that we live in is structured along class lines. It's a class-based society, and therefore the haves have access to all of the best. Whether you're looking at health, they go to private clinics and so on. And that's why even in the area of health, the approach is to ensure that primary health care takes place. Every school must have a nurse, qualified nurse, so they can look at these learners and refer and assist them. Simple inoculation can prevent. Simple hygiene is preventative. So that has to improve in that fashion. So the same applies to the criminal justice system as well.
The other thing I found particularly interesting was a statement that talks about the economy and creating jobs. You make an assertion as the party that you've been an integral part of public debate and interactions with the private sector, but also with the public, and you've played an important role in shaping the economic debate. Now, the question I want to ask is whether there is indeed a public debate about job creation in South Africa. Is there such a debate? Which, in the statement, the ANC says it's been playing a critical role in.
Well, there is a public debate around that issue. First and foremost, the issue of job creation is a priority of the ANC. It's one of those priority areas that we agreed we need to focus on. Now,
and the president did in his State of the Nation address last year say that was the priority for the year. He went back to Parliament to
do what they normally do, which is job cutbacks. Instead, the resources would be availed to look at other ways of ensuring that we cushion workers against job losses. But of course, you know, in today's global economy, causality and effect comes into play when the major consumers of the automotive products in the developed countries, when that slows down, it means that the production lines in our country would also clog up.
Now, another economic question would be around when the current leadership of the ANC took over from the previous one. There was a lot of support from COSATU and the SACP. In the recent past, one senses that COSATU is a bit frustrated and is already starting to talk about a sort of going back. In other words, going back to what the previous administration, the neo-colonial agenda as they call it, that they saw before this administration. Would there be a truth? What is the ANC's own? Does the ANC accept that for that assertion? And what would be your response to that accusation?
Well, firstly, the Economic Transformation Subcommittee of the National Executive Committee invites on a regular basis COSATU as well as SACP and other independent economists to participate in their sessions of working out strategic approaches to economic challenges. Now, the new growth path was also discussed with all sectors. Minister Ibrahim Patel, who was driving that, ensured that all parties, all stakeholders in NECLEC as well as outside of NECLEC were engaged in that regard. And they agreed with some proposals, they disagreed with others. So that has been the norm, that has been the practice. Of course, the system of capitalism has its own vicious cycles where overproduction happens in the midst of hunger, because consumption under this system is a function of liquidity. When we say so many people consume bread, are a market for bread, we mean people who have the money. But from the approach of progressive trade union federations such as COSATU, they have to raise issues of the plight of people who go to bed without a morsel of bread, you see. So they come at economic issues from that angle, and it is most welcome, because if you don't have that voice, that kind of voice, the rules, when you do economics, the rules of economics is simple supply and demand, and profit maximization, you see. Now, they are bringing into the debate the plight of ordinary working people.
Deputy President, we are going to take another quick commercial break. And when we come back, we ask the question, why is the ANC, or why does the ANC feel that there's a need to enhance its moral standing in South African society? Don't go away. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back. You're watching a live broadcast coming to you from Bloemfontein. This, of course, being the day on which the ANC, the ruling party in South Africa, celebrated its 100 years in existence. Mr. Deputy President, we are determined to enhance the ANC's moral standing and image among the people of South Africa. Why? Why did the ANC feel that there was a need to do this? Do you feel that the ANC's image has suffered in the recent past?
Yes, indeed. The ANC needs at all times to act in a manner which enhances its image and prestige, because people and in communities, the nation at large, can only accept leadership from those that it holds in high esteem. Once there is doubt about that, then you know, it means the ANC cannot lead, because it would just be one of the followers. In other words, we must, when you hear ANC people also saying, those in government, that is, like ourselves, if I begin to bemoan the challenges that face our people, that would then mean that we have no right, we have lost the right to continue governing. We have to find solutions, not by pretending that we have a monopoly of wisdom, but by tapping on the collective brain and talent that obtains in the country, and ensuring that we create that space so that the country as a whole, the nation, can prosper. And for that to happen, our vision has to be clear. We have to be very clear about what the next step is in dealing with education, health, infrastructure, backlogs. I think it's a crying shame that today, in this day and age, I go to a place like Mount Frere and I find a well-built, you know, face brick school, and it has no toilet facilities. Both learners and teachers have to go out of the premises to the veld to relieve themselves. It's a crying shame.
Would you say things like corruption, maladministration in government have added to that which the ANC says now must be addressed and must be addressed now?
That must be addressed, because you see, the image of the ANC is a function of each and every member of the ANC, wherever you are, in whatever community or area of work where you may find yourself. If you don't act honorably, with integrity, that impacts on the image of the ANC, because those who are around you will say, this is how the ANC is. You are the very embodiment of the ANC, and that's what we have to correct. Make sure that ANC members understand the obligations that comes with being a member of the ANC. It mustn't be that the ANC is associated with corruption, with greed, self-adulation. It mustn't be that way. It must be that the ANC is associated with empathy and care, solidarity with those who are disadvantaged today.
But don't you think, Deputy President, that perhaps a lot of the problems, the ANC brings those problems to itself by, among other things, sort of sugarcoating the language or tiptoeing around what needs to be done when in fact the circumstances call for more drastic action? Because very often...
Give me an example, then I'll be able to respond.
I'm saying in instances where, for example, there are very specific cases of corruption. In the past year, we were helped by the public protector because she was very specific. Allegations were made, and she was public. She went public with them, even though like certain people said, "Oh no, that was not good for her to do that." But in the end, those things helped, because now the feeling, I think, among a lot of people is that action was taken because the language was not kind, because things were said the way they were. The public protector said things and acted on the evidence that she had without sort of tiptoeing around things, and didn't sugarcoat. She didn't mince her words. So that then made it difficult for the government not to act in those instances. Because the question then becomes, isn't it then a case of government having acted because things were laid bare?
On the contrary, you must view the public protector as one of the institutions that are meant to strengthen democracy, because we're a democratic country, and therefore when there are allegations, due process has to take place, and in this instance that due process was in the form of the public protector's investigations, and once the report is produced, action is taken on the basis of that report. That's my understanding.
Now, further on, the statement says, "We shall renew our connection and dynamic contact with the people." Would that be an acknowledgement again that perhaps you've been lax, or you have not been in contact with the people who made what the ANC is today as much or as often, or that relationship has not been as dynamic as it should have been?
Well, that relationship has not been as dynamic as it should have been. Firstly, because the ANC is about the only organization in South Africa which maintains basic structures in all wards. And those structures, if they function correctly, would enable the ANC to remain in dynamic contact with those communities. The fact that, toilets that are not covered can stand there for a few years without such effect coming through is proof that those branches of the ANC are not in dynamic contact with issues affecting the communities. Because if there's a branch of the ANC there, that is one of the issues that should have been raised much earlier, openly, so that these things can be addressed. And that is why there's an acknowledgement that we need to improve on the dynamic contact with the people, because our people do not only have concerns and complaints, they have suggestions, good suggestions as to how challenges and problems affecting them can be addressed.
Mr. Deputy President, we are going to take another quick commercial break. We will be back with the Deputy President of the African National Congress right after this. Welcome back. You're watching a live broadcast. We're coming to you from Bloemfontein, where the ANC is holding 100 years, is celebrating 100 years in existence in South Africa. And with us to unpack the hopes, the ambitions, the acknowledgements, and everything that the ANC has said today is the party's Deputy President, Mr. Kgalema Mothlante. Mr. Deputy President, 2012, of course, also happens to be the year in which the ANC is going to hold its elective conference. A lot has been said about how dangerous for South Africa, the year can be if certain things are not brought into control. What confidence does the ANC leadership give to the people of South Africa that whatever happens over the next year will be under control and won't be allowed to, so to speak, mess with the country and the way it's supposed to be run?
No, this year the ANC is going to hold a policy conference, and arising out of the report of the debates of the policy conference, that report will go back to the ANC structures and the general public, of course, to look into that and further debate them, because it then serves as a basis for the crafting of draft resolutions for the ANC elective conference. And it is only once those draft resolutions are debated at the elective conference and adopted that they become policy of the African National Congress, which would then inform the crafting of the manifesto in 2014. Those are the processes that would unfold in the course of this year.
So do you think those fears are justified, or they're exaggerated, or there's nothing to worry about at all?
There's nothing to worry about, I would say. Absolutely nothing to worry about.
Now, within the ANC's ranks, there have been certain sections, among them the Youth League, that has raised very, some would say, critical issues, but perhaps with a different agenda, as some have suggested. Has the ANC leadership sat down and made an assessment, at any point made an assessment of what is in the public domain and said to yourselves, maybe this is how we should tackle this one, or this is how we should tackle this one? Or are you saying all of that would have to wait for the processes you've just described?
Well, no. The Youth League raised the issue of nationalization of the mines, and they took it to the National General Council of the ANC, and the National General Council referred it to the National Executive Committee. The National Executive Committee set up a team to go into that question, and that team is to report back to the National Executive Committee with regards to that question. So that's one of the issues that were in the public domain. If there's any other, I can respond.
The information bill is also very much in the public domain, and so was the issue of the tribunal.
No, you see, the
media tribunal, that is.
The media appeals tribunal resolution is a resolution of the ANC elective conference of 2007 in Polokwane. And all it says is that the ANC should investigate the desirability of establishing a media appeals tribunal. What does it mean? It means the ANC must assess as to whether the appeals processes that obtain today in the print media in particular are adequate. And the good thing that has come out of that is that print media has itself accepted that indeed it's not good enough when a report which is baseless finds prominent coverage in the newspaper, and the appeal processes only lead to correction and an apology in a small box almost 2 months, 4 months later. They've made that admission that that's not good enough. And they are looking at their own self-regulatory processes and how to strengthen the Press Ombudsman's office as well as the Press Council. That process is in motion. We are waiting with optimism that they will come back with a product that would ensure that, because once the appeals processes are efficient, that will remove the basis of the desire to investigate possibilities of another level of appeal.
What do you say then to someone who says, well, ANC leaders are just as guilty as perhaps the media, in that they are looking after the things that appeal to them the most, or that deal with them, or that affect them personally? In other words, there have been a lot of ANC leaders who are grieved because of the reports that the media has written about them. Whereas if you're talking about media or even telecoms, we should be talking about community television, community radio. How do we enhance those? How do we, in other words, the ANC leaders are doing what they are accusing the media of doing, which is selfish interest.
No, I don't think so, because as I said, the outcome of just that resolution is that a process has been set in motion of looking at how to strengthen the appeals processes and whether self-regulation of print media is adequate. Now, we are saying we are looking at that process with optimism that it will produce an outcome which would put this matter to rest. So that's the one point. The issue of the information, protection of information, state information bill, is to be treated like any other bill, that it goes through Parliament, the National Assembly, and it has gone through the National Assembly. At the point when the National Assembly voted on it, there was primarily one area of disagreement, and that was the area around the call for the insertion of public interest defense. That if you lay your hands on classified information, and you determine that it is in the public interest, you then publicize it, and your defense is that it is in the interest of the public. Now, the bill essentially is about classification and declassification of state information. So that issue, if 99% of the bill is agreed to, and there's only that one area of disagreement, my own view is that, and that's the view that is shared by many in the ANC, that if sufficient time is given to focus on that 1% which separates the parties from a consensus position, such consensus can be arrived at. And of course it went through the National Assembly, which means it is now in the NCOP. And the NCOP is going to look at the bill. It has the right to change it whichever way it deems fit. The bottom line is that the bill must comply with the Constitution of the Republic. If it is not consonant with the Constitution, because we have the review process, the President can, even before he looks at it, he can refer it for certification first, before he assents to it.
I want to ask you this question very quickly before we take another quick commercial break. would you stand in front of your comrades and say to them, let us address the issue of that clause?
I said so in public in the National Assembly that, in fact, and in the NCOP, that, you know, the 1%, if all parties say they are agreed, the rest, by that I'm leaving out Ambrosini, who's filibustering. I'm saying, you know, if the parties say this is the area of disagreement, this public interest defense, let's focus on that issue and debate it such that a consensus can be found. And I think it can be found.
Well, we are going to take another quick commercial break, and we'll be back right after this. Welcome back. You're watching a live broadcast coming to you from Bloemfontein, where the ANC is having its 100 years anniversary celebrations, and here with us unpacking the policy, the statement that the ANC released earlier today, which was read by the president of the party, Mr. Jacob Zuma, is the deputy president of the party, Mr. Kgalema Mothlante. Mr. Deputy President, looking forward to 2012, what for you as a leader of the PEPs, this wouldn't be something that you would have discussed with your colleagues, what for you as a leader would you, having seen how people appreciated and celebrated the ANC's 100th anniversary, what would you like to see in 2012? I'm talking to you as a leader, specifically your own thoughts, something you would perhaps not have discussed with your colleagues in the party.
Well, firstly, I would really hope that we would be able to address the infrastructure backlog, because we must continue to bring the section of the South African population that resides in rural areas as well as townships into the better developed part of the South African landscape, so that the people as citizens, their children as learners, should have same access to facilities, to amenities, to education, quality education, and of course health, primary health care must you know, be the order of the day. That's and of course we must address the plight of the 2.8 million young people between the ages of 18 and 24 who are neither in any institution of learning or training nor in any job. We must respond in a manner that speaks to the concerns of that section of the South African population.
And at an organizational level, in as far as the ANC goes, are there very specific things that you would like to see, or specific things that you wouldn't want to see repeated?
Well, the ANC has to continue renewing itself, and the celebration of the centenary helps in the sense that it brings to the fore the mores, the values of the ANC, and the vision from, you know, the founding fathers, and we must understand today that we are standing on the shoulders of these giants, and therefore we can't be inward looking. We have to see very clearly the areas where there is deprivation, where there is inefficiencies, and address those, seek to address those efficiently, effectively, promptly, and develop a vision. And this attempt has been set in motion through the National Planning Commission. A vision which would enable us as a nation to understand what needs to be done in order to address challenges in education and health, the economy, and so on, so that even as changes happen in the form of personnel or leadership, the trajectory that we follow should be the same. There should not be sea changes because personnel has changed, because I think that is being a disadvantage, because it means you're almost starting from scratch all the time. And to achieve that, we have to ensure that the key layers in state are stable.
But would that be true for the party as well? There are people who are already saying the ANC should change leadership. Do you think that at the level of the party's leadership, that stability should continue as well?
Yes, the ANC is being very stable, and that's reflected by the fact that for 100 years it has only had 12 presidents. That in itself is a sign of stability. And I believe that once you are elected, one of the lessons of the history, you've said history has been dealt with adequately. One of the lessons that I've drawn out of the history of the ANC is that you could never be elected to lead the ANC if you were not already a leader of one section or the other of the communities or population. Because first and foremost, delegates to conference can only elect you if they know of your capabilities from playing leadership or exercising leadership in whatever capacity. So once they elect you, I don't think, and this is a matter of principle, that you must never ever ask any other member of the ANC to nominate you or to elect you.
And you won't do that?
I won't do that, no, never.
And if they say do it?
That's why the ANC has processes and procedures that you are nominated. You have to, if you are to lead, if you are to be able to lead, you have to be elected by the will of the membership of the ANC. It mustn't be that you are being elected because you have canvassed and you have an efficient electioneering machinery, that kind of stuff. It shouldn't be, because if that be the case, tomorrow you will not be able to stand on a platform of the ANC with a clear conscience that well, I am here to serve you because you are the ones who have asked me to serve in this capacity. You would not be able to do so because you would be indebted to your election managers or election machinery. So it shouldn't be done at all.
So, Deputy President, thank you very much, and once again, congratulations to the ANC on 100 years.
Thank you.
Well, that's all. That's where we're going to leave it. Thank you very much for watching. The ANC celebrations do, of course, continue. If you watch our programs this evening, the evening bulletins, as well as the morning live tomorrow morning, these celebrations continue, and we'll be unpacking the vision and mission of this organization as it starts another 100 years. From me, Vuyo Mvogwa, and the rest of the crew, thank you for watching, and good night.